G'day everyone, Catherine here from Generation Wellness Australia. This is a video I've been wanting to do for quite a while, and I'm still going through the process. So I want to talk and share my story about tongue ties because there just isn't a lot of information out there for parents, and even the experts say to me the research is still being done, we're still learning all the time. And so yeah, I've had a 5-year journey now with tongue ties, and so I consider myself almost up there among the experts, and I can certainly, if people want to contact me about referrals and things, I know quite a few of the players here in Brisbane, and I have heard a few other names of different areas. So if you're not sure in your area, ask and I'll see if I can find out for you. Well, firstly, there's not just tongue ties, there are lip ties and there are also buccal ties. So there are different types of tongue ties, so there's a lot to this. So tongue tie is just that the tongue is restricted in some way, but there can be an anterior portion as well as a posterior portion. And the anterior is one that's really easy to pick up because it's right here at the front, and you'll notice that the tongue's being held down. But posterior is a bit harder to detect, and quite often gets missed because it's actually underneath towards the back of the tongue. The tongue is just bound to the floor of the mouth a little bit too far forward. This is my son. And so that is often not diagnosed at all, or certainly not diagnosed early enough, and because there's not enough people out there who know about it. Even lactation consultants, in my experience, when they're looking, they just say, oh, baby's feeding fine, and they don't get into the long-term implications if there is something else going on. So I really want to talk about that in a minute. But generally, if there's a lip tie, so a tie here under the lip that's binding the lip a little bit, there'll be a membrane or something, or the lip will have trouble retracting. About 90% of cases where there's a lip, there's a tongue or a posterior tongue. And the buccals are again a membrane or tightness under here where the cheek is bound to the gum. So they may not be obvious, as I've said. And as soon as you talk to people about ties, they just poke out the tongue. Nope, I don't have anything. Or no, it seems to be fine. It's not the critical factor. The critical factor around ties, particularly for the tongue obviously, is that the tongue has to go, naturally is supposed to sit in the roof of the mouth. That's how the palate develops and widens, the pressure of the tongue. That's how your airways develop and widen. So it's not just about, is the baby breastfeeding fine? It's about proper mouth and dental development. It's about proper airway development. And it occurs when the mouth is closed and the tongue sits in the roof of the mouth. So mouth breathing is a big issue, and I see lots and lots of kids doing it, and I just look and go, Mouth breathing is a big issue because the lips need to be closed, the tongue needs to be in the roof of the mouth for proper airway development, dental development. So now what this leads to, the lack of airway development. So you know, things like snoring, absolutely. Sleep apneas, inflammation of the tonsils and adenoids, because obviously you're not filtering air through the nose as you should be. So you can be immunocompromised. Again, you're not filtering and things aren't going into the body the way that they're supposed to, so the immune system can respond appropriately. So when I hear about kids having their tonsils out, again, I'm like, there are probably other things that can be looked at first. Training the mouth to stay closed, the tongue in the roof of the mouth, looking for ties, all this sort of stuff really should be looked at first. And people are working in isolation, so the ENT looks at the tonsils or whatever and goes, oh, we need to deal with that. The lactation consultant looks whether the baby's feeding and just deals with that. So my frustration is that there's not a broader understanding. And again, I'm not an expert. I've just lived this for the last 5 years. So if you see your children having crowded teeth, I'm the perfect example. And when I say crowded teeth, so for a child, my daughter's baby teeth look perfect. However, baby teeth should have almost as much space between them as there are teeth, because you're leaving room for the adult teeth. So if you look at your kid's teeth and you go, oh, I'm not sure, if there's not a lot of space, they don't have enough room. So that's something to look at. And there are a lot of great people, again, I can make recommendations about doing early preventative orthodontic work while the palate is still malleable. So while you've got baby teeth, your palate is made of cartilage and it can move very easily and without pain. Once you get your adult teeth, that palate starts to fill in with bone. And so obviously when you get to braces and you start trying to rearrange things, that's a real issue, because you've now got bone there that you're trying to move. And while I'm on that, thank you to whoever's doing that next door, while I'm on that, when you try and move things here, you're pushing back into the skull. So you really need additional chiro-osteo-cranial work to make sure that everything is moving and making space. This has to be a holistic approach. So another thing about mouth breathing is that you don't get the right oxygenation of your blood. So that helps us, doesn't help us. Mouth breathing makes you feel sluggish because your body's not getting the right amount of oxygen. It's not getting the right carbon dioxide to oxygen balance. So when your kids are sluggish at school, they might start to misbehave. People think that this is actually linked to ADHD because the kids are going into that hyper mode to try and make themselves wake up and feel more alert because they're sluggish and they've got that mental fogginess that's weighing them down. So they ramp up that behavior to just try and wake themselves up and feel a bit. But definitely for adults, I mouth breathe at night. I know I do. You wake up feeling foggy and blah, and your acidity in your blood is not balanced, and so that's a real issue as well. So I've talked about the fact that I'm really passionate. This isn't being dealt with in a holistic way, and there are not a lot of people out there who are trained in this. So there are people who are giving you advice as a professional, lactation consultants, pediatricians, etc., GPs, midwives, but they're not trained in this. So I beg you, if you have any concerns, just go and get a professional assessment by someone who's trained in orofacial myology or myofunctional or whatever it is. I can't even remember the correct term. But all this mouth stuff, there are people who are specifically trained in this and not very many, and even then they have to keep staying on top of the research. So I would say to you, take note of all the other consequences that come from mouth breathing, from not having the tongue in the roof of the mouth. And because you can teach a child to breathe properly through their nose, you can do exercises to strengthen the lips and the tongue, you can do a lot of things, even if they're not tied, to address these issues before you start doing surgery on these kids to take their tonsils out, or like if they've got crappy immune systems, there's a lot of long-term sleep apneas, there's a lot of long-term health side effects that come from tongue ties, mouth breathing, all these things. And so I just beg you, if you're struggling with any aspect, snoring, breastfeeding, whatever it is, don't just get that professional at that time, the pediatrician or the lactation consultant's opinion. Go and have it properly assessed, because this is just such a big indicator for long-term health. So that's, I actually detected my children's ties when they were about 4 weeks old, and I didn't get the right referrals at the time. I got probably the best that I could expect with the knowledge that was there at that time, but as I said, I'm still dealing with it 5 years later because I wasn't given the right referrals. I wasn't given all the information. My son had his anterior tie snipped at about 6 weeks of age, and I thought, woohoo, yay for proactive parenting, I'm all done. No, Like I said, he's had ties, the posterior addressed at 2.5. Then he's just had the buccals and the posterior again at nearly 5. And now we have to do all the palate expansion work to make room for his teeth. So the implications are huge for this. And so yeah, if you want more information, if you have questions, please reach out. I have an extensive journey that I've been through, and I'm passionate about sharing this because there's just not enough out there about it. And so please take from my experiences and do better for your kids. All right, thank you, and best of luck with your journey. I'm here for any questions. Bye guys.